Press record. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so um, I think what we have a lot of updates today, and um, I do want to tell you all about where we're at with tax credit and grant. But since we've got some directors on the call, I kind of want to start with the part that involves them so they can drop off. So, um, yeah, as always, we've got our housekeeping items that we'll start with. So thank you all for adjusting to the third Wednesday of the month for the last 3 months of the year. Next month is the last time we'll meet on the third Wednesday instead of the fourth. We'll return to our normal fourth Wednesday of the month in 2026. Thank you everyone for your quarterly reports. The next one isn't due till the end of January. And then what I really want to talk about today is the submitting invoices piece. I want to really stress that there is no flexibility to reimburse an invoice that comes later than 2 weeks after our contract ends. So this sounds like such a distant future item, but yeah, we're a little, what I would hate to happen is for contract work to happen and you guys not being able to be reimbursed for work you've done because you've invoiced just one day too late. So I really want to stress that there's absolutely no flexibility we have about this due to our constraints from the federal government. So, yeah, as you guys know, in thinking about spend down rate, and for those of you who haven't been invoicing at a rate that looks like you'll be spending all of your funds by the end of next year, we've had conversations about shifting funds, maybe adding new subcontractors. So I want to thank all of you guys for your work on that. If you have new thoughts, new ideas, please let me know and we can set up a time to talk about that. For those of you who have submitted requests to change your budget amendments, those are in the process of being kind of going through their protocol with our business operations team and our procurement director, and she is working on those. I know she sent out one for signatures yesterday. So that should be coming soon for those of you who have submitted requests to shift funds. So if you would like to submit a request to shift funds, please reach out. As you know, you can't invoice us for anything that's not on your contract. So yeah, please make those requests before you send us an invoice. So, and then this is the piece that we want to talk with you about because it will affect the way you guys dole out your time and think strategically. We really expect that the vast majority of the funds associated with your contract work has been invoiced by October of next year. So we also want to say that it is okay to run out of hours before the contract, before December 31st. And the reason is we would much prefer, because there's just absolutely no flexibility here to bump things into the future. We would prefer to know that you guys have been paid for the vast majority of what you've done with this contract, than waiting until the end of the year and running that risk with, a very large value of your invoice in November and December. So where this gets a little awkward is acknowledging that based off of our 1 year of running this tax credit program, the highest demand for TA help seems to be for that December 31st time period. So I want to bring this up because I want you all to be thinking about that and how you're going to allocate your time. I also want you all to be thinking about how you plan to offer your services as we near the end of this contract and after this contract ends. Because as you know, if you've helped someone apply for a tax credit, the help that they need doesn't necessarily stop when they submit the application. There's often times when we come back with clarifying questions, and TA providers may be called in to assist. So I want you to be thinking about that. If you're done with your contract and you're going to have a hard stop at December 31st, where will that leave someone who maybe was relying on you for follow-up questions that we may send in January of next year? So I want you guys to think about that. And as we've said, it is okay to have done all of your work and have run out of hours before the contract is over. And we can navigate, when you guys are done, take your information off of the website, just so, yeah, no one is expecting you to be doing work when you've run out of money to do that work. So I know that some of you have mentioned that you plan to support tax credit applicants in your region or in a smaller region in some way, even after this contract's over. That's very generous of you. But for those of you who aren't in a position to continue working on this TA project after funds have run out from this contract, I just want us to be thinking about a strategic way to spend down all your money, and then kind of gracefully exit from the work. So this may sound like it's a little premature, but yeah, we want you guys to have a really big runway to spend down your funds. Are there comments, questions? Yes, Hunter.
Thanks, Mickey. I know so I'm not asking about like invoicing beyond that date, but are you exploring any like no cost extensions of sort of this program since the tax credit is going to be available? If we haven't used all of our funds, is there a chance we can continue providing technical assistance into the following year?
Um, what do you mean by no cost extension?
So that might be a term from CDPHE.
Okay.
Just with some other grants, basically, um, if we haven't used up all of the funds, this primarily happened during COVID, because there were these particularly large grants. And sort of the uncertain nature of the end of the COVID emergency.
Mm.
But basically, they extended the end date of our contract without allocating any additional funds to the contract, just to kind of allow us to continue implementing the project, um, without kind of granting any additional funds to the organization.
So I can follow up on that. My impression is no, though. Um, Michelle, you can chime in too if you have other thoughts on this. But yeah, we need to be, I mean, the way this, the way these funds were award or issued to CDA is in the form of a project, and it's expected that the project is over by, honestly, like before the 31st. So we've talked about that. Like, do we need to shift the end date for all of you guys? They said no, but we are expected to submit like final closeout paperwork for this project being over in the eyes of the federal money that came to us that was then distributed to beneficiaries, contractors, etc. So
Right, I was forgetting it was connected to federal money, and
Yeah,
that's more complicated these days. So,
it
right,
is. Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Um, are there any other comments or questions? Okay. So, because we want you to spend all of the money, we will be nudging with a little more persistence if we're seeing that the spend rate is lower. So, um, yeah, there are a couple of you guys in this crowd who are, um, you've taken steps to increase your spend rate, but we'll be checking in on that in a more urgent way. Not because we want to bother you all the time, just because we want this money to go to your organization and not back to the federal government. So, um, okay, that that's what I wanted to say about the contract closeout. I might sound like a broken record with all of this, but it's just because of what I just mentioned. We want this money to go to the project it was intended to. So, um, Michelle, do you have any other things to add about contract closeout?
No, I wish, Hunter, we could. This hurts my soul. As a previous nonprofit executive director, I'm like, oh, um, but I'm pretty sure our hands are tied. I think to Mickey's point, we can ask, but I don't see any way that we can do that. I guess I would just encourage you to reach out to Mickey, to myself, to Adonai, if you're thinking about how to pace and kind of schedule out this work, knowing that the year end is kind of when most people want to apply for that tax credit, just being proactive and thinking about, well, could we be doing now to get people trained up, even if they're not making those purchases until next year and then they're applying next year? But is there pre-support, I guess is the way I'm kind of thinking of this, in anticipation of like, okay, our hours need to be done by the end of December. So if you're interested in having that conversation, or within your team, we don't need to be involved if we don't need to be involved. But I would just throw that out as something to consider, is kind of thinking about the next 12 months, basically 11, 13 months, whatever it is, to really think about the timing and pacing of that. Is there kind of pre-outreach or pre-work you can be doing to offer more support and training for folks who might be applying next year? Yeah. And yeah, just the only last thing I will say is, it's November. I always like to think about gratitude, and just being with CDA for just over a year now, I am so grateful for all the work you all are doing, and have the chance to see some of you at meetings and get to know folks around the state. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, on that note, we can move on. Max, feel free to stay or drop off, but that was the important bit. I really wanted to have you here. But yeah, now I'd like to give some updates on where we're at with grantees and tax credits. So um, as of this morning, we have received confirmation that the Department of Revenue has received our files with information about who's getting tax credits and for how much, which means that we can finally tell those applicants that they, yeah, that they're awarded, which is really exciting. So I'll be sending those out when we get off of this call. I wanted to highlight that 64% of our tax credit recipients this time around had the help of one of you. So that's a big deal. That's the kind of thing we are highlighting for leadership. And when we talk about the outcomes of this tax credit program, this is something that we are pointing to. So, as Michelle said, we are so proud. We are so grateful uh, for all your help. So thank you. And if you were excited as someone to receive updates about an application, you should get an email today, either yes or no, on yeah, whether or not someone got their certificate or there were several denials. So if you got a denial and you're confused about why, I'm happy to connect with you about that. We do have a little explanation, but if you need a little bit more, happy to set up a time to talk about why an application was denied. The good news is there is still another chance. There's one more opportunity for folks who bought equipment in 2024 to apply. The last chance is December 31st. And then for equipment purchased in 2025, there's 4 more opportunities. So that's good news. We were really hoping this news could go out a bit quicker. This step of the process took a little bit longer than we wanted to. We're still kind of learning how Department of Revenue wants to be communicated with. So this is still a piece of the process that we're trying to iron out. But it's getting a little bit smoother every application cycle, which is cool. And then, as you all know, the website will be updated with the total amounts remaining for each tax credit year. Jay.
Did I just hear you say that in people who made purchases in 2025 can keep applying in 26?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that the way it's going to be? Like you've got 2 years to
Yes.
apply?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something we put in rule when we changed the rule last year, that like there's the last period to apply for equipment is like December 31st of the following calendar year. So, yeah, depending on when you buy that piece of equipment, like if you buy a piece of equipment in January, you do have 2 years. But if you buy it on December 31st, you really only have like 1 year. So,
okay, cool.
Monique.
Yeah, just so that we're super clear, if the business submits their taxes in April, then they submit the tax credit application for a piece of equipment that they purchased. They will have to do a revision on their taxes. They will have to submit an amended tax return.
Yes. Yeah.
And if the business submits their taxes on a June to June cycle, then in that case, if they apply for a tax credit in the first quarter of March for something they purchased in December, they will not submit an amended tax return because they're on that June to June cycle.
Yes. And these are tax filing questions, but my understanding is if you've already filed your taxes before you apply, then you've got to go back to the Department of Revenue and amend your taxes for that year. So, okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Is that what you were going to say, Michelle? Yeah. Okay, cool. Lauren.
Is that the same with the consortium delivery fee tax credit? Mm-hmm. Okay, 2-year, 2-year window. Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other comments?
I would just really let people know that if they opt for that, they will have to amend their taxes if they're on a regular calendar year. And that can be a pretty significant administrative lift. So if there's any way to get it in the same year before they submit their taxes, there's no reason not to do that, because amending your taxes with the state also means amending your taxes with the feds. And so it just opens up a lot of doors, also creating a greater interest in someone like the IRS coming in for a complete audit. So
Mm.
you got to weigh the pros and cons there. Again, I'm not a tax expert. This is not tax advice, but when
Yeah.
I'm talking to folks in my region, I'm letting them know that while you have this wiggle room, there are more administrative steps you'll have to take. So if there's anything we can do to get it in the year you bought it, let's do that.
Yeah, that's excellent advice for everyone to hear. We do have a note about, like the section on our website that shows 2024, the info or the link to apply for 2024 also states like you may have to amend your taxes if you've already filed, and we do send that out with all the certificates, that notice. But right, as much as you guys can support businesses in knowing what the actual reality of that will be, especially if like Monique, has experience and knows what that's like, I'm sure that's super valuable. Lauren.
Oh, sorry. I meant to lower my hand.
Okay. Any other comments on that piece? Thanks for highlighting that allowability and also the reality of what that means. Um, cool. Okay. I also wanted to mention that based off of the um, based off of the feedback you guys gave us a couple of months ago in one of these meetings, we are hosting a public information session for the tax credit. We have planned it for December 8th. It's a Monday from 2 to 3. We haven't published this yet. We've got a newsletter being translated now. We're hoping to get that out by the end of the week. Again, this is like a public information session about the tax credit. So I know you guys have brought up the fact that it would be really nice to be able to invite folks who are not in the consortium to that consortium meeting. So we're doing this in response to that. So this is a great chance for folks who are interested or at the beginning stages of learning about this program to learn more about how to apply. We're basically going to go through the website, through the application. We're going to look at eligibility maps and just kind of get into the weeds, but it is more of a like beginners session. So yeah, just wanted to let you guys know about that. Any thoughts on we tried to get a date that was like early December. So as to give people time to digest this information and apply, but we are not held to that date. If you guys have strong feelings about yeah, maybe pushing it out so we could get the word out a little bit more. Again, this is something we would like to be doing on a more regular basis, especially with a little bit more staff bandwidth with grantees closing out. So, any strong objections to December 8th, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.? Cool. Okay. All right. We'll be getting that newsletter out, and we encourage you guys to, share that with relevant parties. Okay. So I'm going to quickly look at the chat to see what I've missed. Besides, so many people don't like turkey, which is so surprising to me. Okay, but Perdita says, for clarification purposes, if they submit in March of 26, then technically they would not amend. Perdita, I don't know if you want to clarify that, but I think what we do want to bear in mind is, our application periods for the tax credit, we just divide the year equally in thirds. So they could submit an application that will be reviewed. Yeah, gosh, our April 30th will be our due date for that first period. So we are not going to be reviewing or issuing certificates until after that, right? And we try to turn these around as quickly as we can, but as you guys know, September 30th was the due date for the last period, and we are sending out certificates today. So that, just because they apply in March doesn't mean they're going to get their certificate for a while. So they may need to ask for an extension, or if they've already filed, then like refile. Is that what you were getting at, Perdita?
She
Okay.
replied yes in the chat, making
Okay.
like
Great.
way down at the bottom.
I see. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Cool. Thanks for your comments, Chelsea, on early December. And then, yes, we are going to send out an invitation through our community food access newsletter. So everyone on this call should be on our CFA newsletter. This is something that you should put yourself on this newsletter. You can find a link to join that newsletter on our website. Michelle, do you mind putting that in the chat? That would be very helpful. For those of you who are new, and then you can get all of the updates that we send out to our general listserv. Also, on that note, if you are a new subcontractor, we talked a while ago about me manually adding you to the consortium listserv. The consortium listserv is basically just consortium members and you guys. So if you have a new subcontractor, please let me know what their email address is so that I can manually put them on that consortium newsletter. Thank you so much, Michelle. Okay, I think I got the questions in the chat. Anything else? Any questions about like joining newsletters and listservs? Okay. All right. On the topic of the grant, we are 82% of the way there. We are just, yeah. For some of these grantees, it's been a really tough road to get their projects done. A lot of times because of factors outside of their control. So, just wanted to let you all know that Adonai and I are really doubling down on sending out grant impact report links. So this is a great time to encourage people to fill out that grant impact report. We should be getting a lot more of those out there into the world. And we have updated your grantee spreadsheets as of yesterday. So feel free to take a look. We're really happy to see a lot of folks moving into the green and the blue and the black. That's good. That's like stages of doneness. There are still folks who, as you know, we've got almost 20% of people who are still working through their grant. We are, there's a handful of businesses for which we don't even really have a plan for when they will finish spending their money. I think all of you guys who have been helping a grantee know who we're talking about. We will be sending stronger language about needing a date and a really firm timeline as we approach, as what you all know is the end of this project. So, we're happy to see a lot of folks closing out, but there are still a few question marks out there, and we'll be leaning on your support as we try to get folks to the finish line. Any questions about the grants, the grantee spreadsheets, anything on that topic? Okay. For our next consortium meeting, we are planning to host what we're calling O-Edit Day, but we've been talking with the director of the Minority Business Office at the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And she is very excited to share a lot of opportunities that are relevant to our consortium businesses. So this meeting, which is going to be, we're still nailing down a date that works for all of these O-Edit program managers, but it will be in January, and it will be a chance for these different tax credit opportunities to be explained to our consortium members, because many of them are very good fits for other tax credit opportunities. So we feel like this would be a good meeting for you guys to attend to learn more about other opportunities, as you think, outside of the box even of the community food access program. Okay, any questions about that? All right. Okay, that kind of concludes our updates. I did want to just open up the back half of this meeting to talk about SNAP. As many of you know, this has been a really crazy month with the government shutdown and folks not receiving their November benefits for SNAP. So because our program is so dependent on SNAP in certain ways, or adjacent to, working in concert with SNAP, I wanted to just take a minute to talk about all the different sort of attacks on the SNAP program right now. And I guess calling them attacks is a little bit charged, but there are a lot of ways that the federal government is trying to lessen the amount of money that goes out in SNAP benefits. So I want to just make these 4 things clear, because it can be really confusing when we just talk about SNAP cuts. There's actually a lot of different ways SNAP is being changed. I also want to hear about all of your experiences in this last month, as you're all working in the food access space, and we were faced with a pretty unprecedented reality of 42 million Americans not getting benefits that they rely on. So if you weren't following what was going on with the federal government shutdown, there was a lot going on. What was happening was changing almost by the day. In fact, there were days where the communications we were sending out was changing 3 times in that day. So, and the reason for all of that confusion was because there were some court cases, there were some, USDA would say something, but then the federal government, Trump's office would say something different. So it was very hard to know what actually was going to happen. There was a moment where it was expected that partial funds would go out, and then full funds, but the Department of Human Services had to be stopped part of the way through issuing those full funds. So very crazy. When the government opened folks got their SNAP benefits, which is great. In that time, CDA was involved in discussions with the governor's office and other state agencies, and also, meetings with like governors' offices from all over the country, learning about like what other states' plans were. So we kept retailers and consortium members up to date through the consortium Google group. And we did our best to listen to the ways this threat was affecting our retailers. And we're in a pretty unique position to represent these small food retailers to the governor's office and decision makers, which, it's helpful that those retailers now have a voice, a collective voice. But unfortunately, there really wasn't much that we could do besides keeping these guys informed. So I want to hear your stories about what has happened or what you've seen on the ground in this past month. But I also want to differentiate between what happened with the SNAP shutdown, with the federal government shutdown, and what we talked about last week was the USDA proposal to make the stocking requirements to become SNAP authorized more strict. That is totally separate from what happened in the last month. I also want to bring to your attention that Colorado is one of, I think, 13 states that requested a waiver to essentially put more restrictions on what people could buy with SNAP. That is honestly totally separate. That's a Colorado Governor Polis charge. So that's happening as well. And the main restrictions were, making it so Coloradans can't purchase soda with their EBT cards. So that's separate too. And then, of course, there are the cuts to SNAP due to HR 1, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill. Mostly, this restricts who is able to receive SNAP based off of, it increases work requirements. It changes who is eligible to receive benefits. So sure, yeah, I'm glad this is helpful, Penelope. I don't actually feel like I'm doing a great job of eloquently talking about each of these changes, but I do want to bring this up, and I want to just open the floor to your thoughts and comments, and anything you're hearing from retailers or individuals about these changes to the SNAP program.
I'll go ahead. I do a lot of work with SNAP. I'm one of a few people in Mesa County, just I think 2 or 3, who outside of the DHS offices can help people complete SNAP applications and do recertifications and upload documents and things like that. So for sure, since those changes have taken effect, there have been a lot of people with questions, concerns, confusion, folks who are, maybe more likely to lose their benefits, if not for a period of time, because they'll have to find a new way to prove their, inability to work and things like that. So previously, folks who were unhoused and veterans were not necessarily part of the able-bodied adults without dependents in that age range of having to qualify under certain work, or I should say, having to meet certain work and volunteer expectations. And now they are not part of that. So they will have to essentially find a way to prove that they're either find ways to meet those 20 hours a week volunteer or work requirements, or they will have to prove why they are they fall into the disability qualification, which is what a lot of people who work with these populations are trying to kind of figure out the angles on how to best make that argument through like accessing services that serve like community offices that serve people with disabilities. So whether or not someone's receiving disability income, if you can prove that they are seeking out disability services, it might be enough to help keep them enrolled in the program. But again, these are also populations that are not necessarily going to have like documents ready to produce, or people who are always advocating for them and providing them with materials so that they can meet those requirements. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of anxiety. And then in terms of the recent, of course, the shutdown, our food bank, we got smashed with requests. And I think our director noted recently, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was pretty outstanding. We saw something like over 300 new households since the government shutdown began, and something like 2/3 of those were starting the last week of October. So it's been phenomenal, the response from the community. I mean, we're grateful that folks knew where to find us, but also it was wild. So yeah, I mean, something like 10%, right? We've said 10% or so of Coloradans are connected to the SNAP program. And that's less than a lot of people who could qualify. So yeah, it's been tremendous. And I think just trying to best understand, how is it going to affect our individual community members, but also how is it going to affect Colorado while we try to deal with the aftermath of a government shutdown, reopen, new things that the offices have to comply with and message about. So our error rates will likely increase, which will mean that more of those fees will come back to the state. So anyway, it's a whole bag of cats, and it's a little bit wild. So I'm sure lots in the group have had similar or different experiences. So I will give up the floor now.
Thanks for sharing all of that, Carly. And yeah, I think, Carly works for the food bank of Grand Junction, community food bank of Grand Junction. So yeah, you're very connected with, right, the charitable food scene. And right, I think we've all been hearing about how food pantries and food banks have been absolutely so busy, like 10 times busier than they usually are. And that was even before the government shutdown. So really important to hear your experiences in this last month, and also to hear about how people are confused and stressed about those work requirements. On the topic of how this impacts our retailers, we compiled, as some of you guys know, we asked a question in our grant application and in our tax credit application about what percentage of sales come from SNAP. So about 50 of our retailers have a pretty significant percentage of their sales coming from SNAP. And right, I mean, having no one receive SNAP benefits for almost 2 weeks was a huge hit to some of these businesses. And then thinking down the line about, like this just substantially reduces the number of people with SNAP benefits and how that might affect their sales. Yeah, this could have downstream changes, maybe, in what their sales are and what their highest profit margin items are, how much of their highest profit margin items are being sold, if that makes sense. And then, we know because of distribution challenges to some areas of the state, this could make certain stores not able to receive SNAP at all. So, yeah, in the ways that this impacts individuals, it's very extreme, but then there's this ripple effect to our small food retailers and other downstream suppliers in the community. So, Lauren, go ahead.
Mickey, this is making me think that I just wonder, I'm curious how many of our retailers are aware of all of these different pieces that are either coming down the pipeline or potentially coming down the pipeline, and are like putting those pieces together and tying that back into their bottom line. And I wonder if that's something that would be worth talking about at an upcoming consortium meeting.
Yeah, great point, Lauren. And, as I mentioned, we've been sending these, topical updates, and kind of time sensitive updates to our consortium through that Google group. But yeah, like I think the message would drive home a little bit more if we talked about it in a group discussion, and folks could hear from others how they're bracing for impact. So I think that's a really good idea. And it makes me wonder if we should move the O-Edit day to the next, kick it down the road a little bit, because this is pretty time sensitive. Angela.
Yeah, so I was in a meeting yesterday with newly named Convecho, I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
And I asked specifically about the stocking requirements because I know that's kind of been floating around. But what I was told is there isn't any specific dates. There actually isn't any like real guidance about it, like if it's happening or not. So
Yeah.
I did ask if they are going to be putting anything out, and Diana said that they're putting something together that I think would be a good resource, like when she gets it sent out. But it just seems like they're threatening a lot of things and then like not actually doing it. So it's I don't know. I feel like it's something that should be brought up just in case, but more of a like this is a possibility, just I don't know. I feel like the confusion is the point, So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
just to kind of give a little bit of like insight on that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Angela. And just to clarify, based off of my understanding of that, well, yeah, there's a lot of ways things just suddenly become law or rule, right? But where that SNAP stocking requirement piece is it was announced in a press release a few months ago that the USDA was considering making changes to this rule, and that they were accepting public comment on it. So that means that we can all comment on it. So in some ways, it is right. It is confusing. It does feel a bit like a threat, but it does still offer all of us and Provecho the opportunity to make a formal comment saying how we feel about how those changes would actually impact communities. So, yeah, I welcome all of you to make a public comment on it. I can dig up the link to that if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I just put the link in the chat for
thank
the
you.
comment period. But Angela, I totally agree with you. I think right now it's our job as food system advocates and leaders to help demystify all of these things that are flying around for folks. And so expressing there is a proposed rule change to increase stocking requirements for SNAP retailers. To find out more about that rule and to share your opinion, visit this link, as opposed to like, they're going to change stocking requirements and you're going to have to do that and you're going to have to do that. And then folks are just freaking out when the runway for this is so long. Plus, there has been no discussion of how that would be monitored and verified. So there's just a lot still in the works. And I really do feel it's our job to sort of calm the nerves of folks with all of this going on. So it's not appropriate right now for anyone on the call to be saying they're going to require you to carry more products. You know, that's not true. That's not what's happening. So the easiest language is there's a proposed rule change and they're taking public comment right now. And if you have an opinion on this, submit a comment. We'll see where it goes from there, because that's what's actually true right now compared to some of the other kind of spins that folks are getting excited about.
Exactly.
If I could answer Lauren's question in the chat, Dana just said yesterday that, yeah, she will be sending out language for public comment in the next few days. She's still working on it.
And I'm trying to, you guys can maybe see me, like this link that Monique dropped in, it's like, go here and then enter this in the search button. I don't know if you guys saw me do that. That doesn't lead anywhere. Yeah, it is confusing to make a comment. So I'm gonna try to dig up.
I just shared the comment link.
Perfect. Let's see. Okay, so this is where, yeah, okay. And then you can just click this button. Cool. Great. Thank you guys for this discussion on this. And thanks for just stressing that this is not happening yet. They are still receiving comments. So yeah. But in the mix with all of these, a state waiver and the HR1, and then the absolute craziness of and questionable legality of withholding SNAP benefits during the government shutdown, it makes the head spin and creates confusion. So I think as clear as we can get on what's happening and how we communicate that, the better. Lauren.
One thing that I'm trying to keep an eye on, and I'm curious if anyone else is noticing this too, it seems like retailers who have a big percentage of their sales coming from SNAP and also Double Up Food Bucks or the Produce Bonus Program are going to be hit the hardest. And it's kind of like a double whammy when all of these impacts to SNAP come through that will also then impact Double Up Food Bucks or Produce Bonus sales. And I'm curious if Nourish or CDHS is thinking about that or talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I've been reading is, Nourish communicating that like attacks on SNAP are also attacks on these healthy food incentive programs too. Yeah. But right, I think it's we're all just trying to learn how, right? I mean, yeah, these retailers that have kind of based their business around serving this community will take a big hit. And these are businesses that don't have a huge margin to take a big hit. So.
Do you mind if I say one more thing? Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. I I wonder if this is also a good time to revisit and Mickey, let me know how much flexibility we have in this ability to change a rule within the tax credit. But currently, farmers that sell direct to consumer, one of the ways that they become eligible for the tax credit or the consortium is that they are either SNAP or WIC authorized. And I feel like even before these changes to SNAP, it's I've just noticed it become really, really challenging for our farmers and ranchers in Southwest Colorado that are in really rural, like low population density areas who are certainly serving low income, low access communities, but not necessarily people using SNAP because one, rural areas have extremely low participation in SNAP, and then two, it's just like it doesn't the finances don't make sense. Um, Getting like purchasing a POS system and then maintaining that, the monthly subscription fees, the extra admin that it takes behind the scenes. You know, they're doing like additional marketing to try to get the word out. And I feel like what I've noticed over the past couple of years is that it just doesn't really seem to be working and actually meeting that goal of increasing access to healthy food, and particularly in these like really rural areas.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Especially, I mean, I know that, right, like the rate at which people actually had um SNAP, like individuals had their SNAP application and benefits issued, that could be a really long time depending on the county. And there's, yeah, there's not much. So yeah, SNAP is an effective program to varying degrees in different places, right? And so to have a lot of other programs relying on SNAP as sort of a verification or an eligibility piece, is already problematic, but now maybe is more so. So yeah, and that's a legislative change. So and as it stands now, it's is SNAP or WIC authorized or demonstrates an intent to become SNAP authorized, which is measured by their ability to produce an application, recent application showing they're SNAP authorized, or sorry, showing that they applied to become SNAP authorized. So you do not have to be SNAP authorized to be considered a farm direct small food retailer, but even making folks go through that step when it's not clear that becoming SNAP authorized will be effective for them or helpful to their community.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I just wonder if we have enough data to kind of reassess if that's working and effective. And then, two, knowing this tax credit is out there until 2030, thinking longer term, I know it would be a legislation change, which is cumbersome, but it could be worth it if we look at the data and see that it's that requirement or expectation is, yeah, not doing what we want.
Yeah, worth looking at. Barbara.
Yeah, I had some very interesting conversations with a couple of the markets I've been working with, for months. And I think to give some good news really would be a great time. So I'll get to that in a second. But one of the more mountain markets, Pine Junction, I talked to their um, cashier, helper, and whatever. She's worked there for 6 years. So they do have a decent amount of snap sales, but she didn't notice any difference. So that was interesting. Then I called the Jasmine Market, and I kind of know the owner because I've been shopping there for a while, and he does still want to get the grant for produce, but he's got a few different things going on, but this is the good news I want to tell you. So, he said, yeah, my sales are down like 30%. And like Friday is the biggest thing they sell. They butcher meat and stuff. So he said that they had usually sell 5 lambs and I think 3 goats, and then they have beef. So he said they only sold 2 lambs and he had 3 left and had to put them in the freezer. And I was like, oh, geez, that's kind of hard on you. I know Friday's like your big meat day. So then he says to me, but by the way, because he knows Jeffco Eats, that I was the founder of my food pantry, he goes, I'd like to donate $400 worth of halal meat to families that might really need it for Thanksgiving. So in the same breath, he was sharing that his sales were down, like 30%. He said, can I offer some meat to some families? Then he also said, which was interesting, because he had gotten another unit and kind of doubled his size, and he said, "There's the barbershop next door, and I'm thinking I might consider renting that, and expanding my store." So it was just a really it was a great conversation. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is that the halal market in Arvada that we've had some trouble like trying to connect with. It's a newer store, started at the beginning of 2025. They just opened up a whole new meat section for halal meat. So in the midst of things going on, like the guy in Arvada, I'm having a little trouble connecting with him, but he just opened up a whole new meat shop and a bakery. So it's just interesting that there was a cutback in their sales for a few weeks, but then in the midst of that, there's some of these markets that are they're positive and thinking we're going to have some. And halal meat is really some of those people come from Aurora to go to Lakewood to get that meat, because they do butcher it themselves, and I'm sure that person in Arvada must know the same thing. So anyway, it was very encouraging.
Well, that's excellent to hear that. Yeah, despite a sales hit, it's not hampering their progress or their goals for expansion. Um, but yeah, want to keep monitoring that because I'm sure a 30% reduction in sales is, yeah, probably not something they can sustain. Maybe they can.
Well, no,
Yeah.
that was just a SNAP sale. So they got their SNAP benefits back. So I'm going to check with him, the beginning of the week on how his Friday meat sales were. But we also did announce to the school districts, so all the liaisons, privately to the liaisons, if you have some families that could use this meat, we can, he'll give up to $400 worth of meat. So that'll give more promo to his store, to the schools, which is very good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Any other comments, questions, stories that folks want to share regarding SNAP? Okay. Any other comments, questions, stories folks want to share about anything else related to our contract work? Okay. Well, that's it for our meeting. Oh, Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, really quick thing. This is a little bit tangential, but I just wanted to share. We are doing a outreach effort to specialty crop producers. So this may or may not impact you. One of the federal programs that we manage within the markets division is the specialty crop block grant. It is a fairly narrow definition. So this is not your average farmer or rancher. Think more potatoes, peaches, chili peppers, greens, those types of things. So I dropped a link in the chat. If you happen to know a farmer or a rancher, actually meat's not a part of this, so just a farmer who is raising any of these crops, we would love to get their feedback. This is ultimately going to help set our state priorities for funding for this federal program in 2026. So just thought I would share that. There's a link to the website, and then once you go there, there's a survey. If you are not involved with any producers that are involved with specialty crops, don't worry about this. Just ignore it and go on about your amazing day. But just thought I would share that. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. All right. Have a great rest of your day, you guys, and see you next month.
Hey, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mickey.
Just wondering, it sounds like
Yeah.
it's a